Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fourth edition of the Capital Legacy webinars with regards to our new products that we launched in August of this year. As we discussed last week in our succession planning webinar, there was a huge demand with regards to the Tazkiya legacy protection plan that was launched, and we actually felt that it needed its own webinar. We felt that it was needed, that we actually, the questions that were coming through from the field is, there's quite a lot of importance around this. It needs its own time, and there's a lot of questions that are coming through, and myself and Alex have thought with the rest of Capital Legacy that we actually want to dedicate the full hour to going through the webinar with you guys. So I'd just like to welcome everyone. It's a real first in South Africa at the moment with the launch of the first SHARIAH compliant life product, and I'm joined as always by fellow partner and CEO Alex Simeonides. And then I'd also like to welcome a special guest, Mufti Ahmed Suliman, who's really helped us with putting the product together. Unfortunately, Ahmed was supposed to be with us here on stage, but due to a family COVID scare, he's going to be joining us via Zoom. So I'd like to welcome Mufti Ahmed, who's going to be going through a lot of the product with us. Alex, before we get going, I know there's a bit of a backstory in terms of how we kind of came about it. It wasn't something that we've actually come to a decision all of a sudden. It's been a couple of years in planning. Yeah. It was probably one of the more difficult products for us to actually come up with because of the complexities around being SHARIAH compliant. Can you just give the viewers a feel of what we went through and why we actually decided to do this?
Yeah, guys. So as Brandon mentioned, we don't just sort of wake up in the morning and go, oh, we must do a SHARIAH compliant solution. They come from ideas. They come from us experiencing problems in the field. So really where the idea started is actually before Capital Legacy's time, when I was still a financial advisor. And I had several Muslim or people of Islamic faith clients. And we looked at SHARIAH compliance investments, but we got stuck when it got to the will and life cover. There wasn't really anything that was readily available. And what I struggled with as an advisor was there was no clear-cut path or source of information and guidance that I could go to try to help my clients of Islamic faith. And then the second thing is, and we've experienced this with Capital Legacy, is that we've had a tremendous amounts of requests when we started Capital Legacy and up until today for SHARIAH compliant wills. But where we ended up with that is we can do a SHARIAH compliant will, but you kind of leave everything half done, because then what about the need to fund estate debts? What about potentially the need to fund an income for spouses? So we needed to create a complete solution that also then sort of looked at what the estate administration looked at. Because one thing to have a will, but will the will actually be also executed according to QUR'ANIC principles?
100%. So yeah, I mean, as you said, we've got so many requests coming in over the last 8 years with regards to the SHARIAH compliant wills. But we felt by just doing the SHARIAH compliant will, it was like, as you said, a job half done. Especially when it came to the state administration and protecting one against the fees. But if we're going to actually just go, what was the need for the Tazkiya legacy protection plan? Well, first, there's no clear leader for SHARIAH compliant estate solutions, as Alex said. There's SHARIAH compliant wills, but kind of that was it. Conventional life cover products are considered impermissible in terms of being able to be used in the Islamic faith. Lack of or expensive SHARIAH compliant will solutions. You generally have to go to a SHARIAH compliant expert before.
Or lawyer.
Or go to a lawyer and get them to draft this, where people were charged fees to do this. And then, Alex, you know me, I always say, when it comes to state administration, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where one is judged from an executive point of view. And there's a need for SHARIAH compliant estate and trust administration.
Yeah, and to that point, you can put out a SHARIAH will, but if you don't make sure that the estate and trust administration is done according to QUR'ANIC principles, it's almost like window dressing, because you don't have that follow through, which we've made sure of.
Yeah, which we've always said, we've got the will, but in the background, when it comes to winding up the estate, are we really doing it that is SHARIAH compliant? But before I carry on, I'd actually like to bring in Mufti Ahmed here to actually go through what we've got in terms of our independent SHARIAH supervisory board that we've actually put together to ensure that everything that we've done at Capital Legacy actually does follow the Islamic faith and makes it fully SHARIAH compliant. So Ahmed, if I'd like to bring you in here.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Thanks, Alex, as well, for having me here today. I think the important point before we actually move into the members and who the members of the SHARIAH Supervisory Board are, it's important to note that at Capital Legacy, the entire Sharia governance infrastructure has been put in place as well. This means that we don't just claim, or Capital Legacy does not claim that they have a Sharia compliant offering without putting the necessary infrastructure in place to make sure that there is ongoing Sharia compliance. And the Sharia compliance has been certified by scholars who understand the market, who understand the need in the market, and who, more importantly, understand the laws of the Islamic laws or the laws of Sharia. So in this particular case, we have a Sharia supervisory board. The task of the Sharia supervisory board is to ensure Sharia compliance. That means whatever is offered in accordance with Islamic law. The scholars that have been appointed on this particular project, or for Capital Legacy, we have 3 scholars on the Sharia supervisory board. If you look at the names, it's Mufti Ahmed Suliman, Mufti Yusuf Suliman, and Mufti Zaid Hospital. A person may wonder what's up with these guys. They all have the same first name. So Mufti is not a first name. Mufti is actually a title given to somebody who has studied Islamic law. He has studied for many years. He understands Arabic. He understands the sources of Islamic law. And he understands how to deduce rulings for the Muslim community. So myself, Ahmed Suliman, I have studied Islamic law for about 11 years and have been practicing ever since. And my main area of concern is Islamic financial institution. I help Islamic financial institutions, and I have served many Islamic financial institutions in and out of South Africa, including First Rand, including EPSA, including Bright TAKAFUL. TAKAFUL is, which we will talk to a bit later on in the slides, refers to Islamic insurance, and other asset managers in South Africa and out of South Africa. Then we have Mufti Yusuf Suliman. Mufti Yusuf Suliman has also studied. So interestingly, the 3 scholars that are up on screen, the 3 of us studied together in the same institution, and we qualified and graduated in the same year as well. Mufti Yusuf Suliman is currently the head of internal Sharia for Standard Bank. He also looks after the Sharia compliance for other asset managers and insurance and reinsurance companies in and out of South Africa. Mufti Zaid Hospital, he's the more, I'll say, intelligent scholar of the 3. When we have more difficult questions, then we would refer to him as well. He was our colleague. We studied together, or I would say he's still our colleague. When he qualified, the principal of the institution actually held him back and asked him to continue teaching at the institution. So he's been teaching at that institution for the last 15 to 20 years. He also served many Islamic financial institutions in South Africa, including First Rand, Standard Bank, and many asset managers like 27-4 investment managers, Zentio, asset management, etc. So the role is to ensure that the product and the services of the Tazkiya offering are and remain Sharia compliant. So when we create the product, it is Sharia compliant, it is certified as Sharia compliant, but we also have the duty of ensuring that it remains Sharia compliant throughout the life cycle of the product.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Thanks, Ahmed. Would you also, Ahmed, just touch on, in terms of the independent SHARIAH trustees, with regards to how we've actually set up the board of trustees? I don't know if you want to jump in here, Alex, before Ahmed.
Yeah, so Ahmed, so in terms of the TAKAFUL, which we and I will maybe touch on just now, we also thought it important to set up a trust. That's the structure we've opted to do. And we also thought it important to also appoint Mufti, who are separate from the board of scholars, to provide an additional oversight to the ownership of the TAKAFUL. Can you maybe touch on the Mufti and the structure here?
Sure. So the requirement from a Sharia perspective when creating the alternatives to conventional insurance is to create a separate ring-fence fund. And then this ring-fence fund may take various forms. with Capital Legacy, we have agreed to use the work model, a work which could be translated in English as the endowment model. So basically, a separate ring-fence fund is created. This fund is separately housed by a trust, a registered trust, and the trust has trustees. What we have done in this particular case is we have added three additional scholars to serve as trustees. So whilst we've got 3 scholars to serve as the Sharia Supervisory Board of the company, we've added 3 scholars to serve as trustees on the trust as well. So Mufti Shafiq Ahmed Jakura, he is from KZN. He studied in KZN, went over to Pakistan, completed his studies there as well. Very noted scholar in the KZN region. Also very, very important figure in the KZN region when it comes to Islamic financial matters. So people of the region would turn to him and request from him services when it comes to matters dealing with finances. He also serves the Al Baraka Group in South Africa. So the Al Baraka Bank Sharia Supervisory Board member, also a member of the Al Baraka Funds, better known as the Old Mutual Al Baraka Equity Funds, Balance Funds, etc. Mufti Muhammad Veli, also a scholar of note, studied in South Africa, then went over to Malaysia, did his master's in Islamic finance at the Malaysian institution or Malaysian university. He then served as internal scholar for the First and Group. He then went on to help EPSA in South Africa, EPSA and the Barclays Group, who required some help. And in his role as Chief Internal Sharia Scholar at EPSA and Barclays, he obviously served the other entities like Barclays in Kenya and the other banks that EPSA owned in Tanzania, etc. He now has joined the First and Group again, and he is now the Chief Sharia Scholar for the First and Group. Mufti Muhammad Taha Karan, if you are from Cape Town, then he needs no introduction. One of the most senior scholars of the Cape region, probably of our country as well. He is the senior and head Mufti of the Muslim Judicial Council in South Africa, and very, very well-known scholar in our country. Very, very highly respected scholar as well. Mufti Muhammad Taha Karan also serves the Islamic finance industry. So he serves companies like, he serves as a Sharia board member of Standard Bank, of EPSA, Alexander Forbes, Bright, TAKAFUL, and many other Islamic financial institutions in and out of South Africa as well.
Thanks, Ahmed. So I think for the viewers, Brandon, what we're saying is that we really take the complexities of Sharia compliance seriously. Where we've been lacking in terms of these skill sets and knowledge, we've brought in what I believe personally to be the right people with the right backgrounds, especially regarding the financial institutions. Because we don't just want to we don't pay lip service and say, oh, we've got a Sharia solution. At the very core, we want you to have the confidence that your clients are going to be following their religious faith, and that so they can put that peace of mind, which is something that we actually sell at Capital Legacy.
So yeah, so I think Alex, it's quite important for the viewers to actually understand that the time and effort that actually went behind, as I said, this was probably our longest project in terms of putting all these products together, because we really wanted to make sure that it, as you say, I think you used the right phrase, window dressing. We haven't just window dressed it. We've gone the extra mile in terms of having the board of scholars, having the board of trustees to really ensure that we have made this Sharia compliant.
100%, and on an ongoing basis.
100%.
So now, how does this all get strung together? So with everything in Capital Legacy, we look at a complete solution. So in terms of offering a single estate planning solution that is Sharia compliant, the first step is to make sure that we have a solid QUR'ANIC last will and testament offering. Now, with Capital Legacy, we don't just stop at the last will and testament. We're also concerned about the executor and trustee fees, which we indemnify through the Legacy Protection Plan. This will be a Tazkiya version, which we'll show you how we do that in a moment. And then what if you've got estate debts or have a need for life cover? Then we've also got life and impairment cover that is Sharia compliant. Wrapped together where Brandon, you put it nicely, that where the rubber hits the road in terms of estates and trust administration that follows QUR'ANIC principles. But Ahmed, I'd like to just bring you in here again for the viewers. So we asked you when we were building So the idea was emanating from the initial sort of need. We asked you to help us with a name in terms of the offering, and you came back to us with the Tazkiya. Do you want to maybe give the viewers some background as to what drove you to offer this name?
Yeah, so in terms of the name, I obviously went to the scholars and I said we need to create a name and find so that it has its own existence, separate existence in the company. We looked at various names, but one thing we realized when we looked at the name, we said, okay, what are we trying to do here? We said, okay, we're trying to purify a person's wealth in terms of his contractual relationships during his lifetime. We're trying to purify the wealth for the heirs who will inherit from him when a person passes away in two ways. Number one, to ensure that the heirs who receive the wealth are in fact the heirs entitled to do so in terms of Islamic law or in terms of the Quranic law of inheritance, number one. And number two, if there are any sort of insurances, etc., that the person would normally take out during his lifetime, we make sure that that is purified as well. So the name we came to is Tazkiya. Tazkiya is an Arabic word which means to purify. So generally when a person, especially from the Muslim faith, when he hears the word Tazkiya, he would ordinarily refer to the purification of the soul. But Islamic law is greater than that. Islamic law speaks about your entire life. And part of that is purification of what you eat, what you consume, and how you enter into contractual relationships. So when we looked at the name, we thought this is a perfect fit for what we're trying to do here at Capital Legacy, and hence the name Tazkiya.
Thanks, Ahmed. So I hope that shed some insight into why the name Tazkiya. So Ahmed, I'm going to bring you back to help me out and explain the principles that we've approached in terms of creating a QUR'ANIC last will and testament option. So just to bring you in here, so the first thing is that we make sure that the will is drafted according to QUR'ANIC principles. Maybe you could touch on the work that you've done with us at Capital Legacy to make sure the clauses meet Sharia compliance.
So this is where the interesting part comes in, because in terms of South African law of succession, a person is free. There's something called freedom of gestation, and you can write in your will whatever you need to write. From a Sharia perspective, we have very limited freedom of gestation, and that limit is 1/3 of the estate, which we will talk to later on. So with regards to the 2/3 of the estate, a person really does not have freedom of gestation, and the Quran has already decided who will inherit from a person and to what extent. Now, this is a very, very important principle for people that follow the Muslim faith, because when the Quran, when we believe that when the Quran has decided who inherits and to what extent, if a person writes a will contrary to that, then too it does not become the entitlement of, or a person does not become entitled to take whatever has been written in that will, but it is the duty of those who remain behind and who are receiving money incorrectly to actually redistribute this thing and make sure that it is done in a correct manner. Now, this, as as it was difficult to explain, obviously would be very difficult to implement, especially when it comes to money. If I'm inheriting, let's say, R1 million worth of assets, for me to say, you know what, I'm not entitled to this and give it back, it can be very hard on a person. So to avoid all those problems, we follow the Quranic principles in terms of writing in the will who will inherit from you and to what extent. And then this almost marries very nicely or gels very nicely with South African law, because South African law has given us freedom of gestation and we can write in the will whatever we need to write. So in this particular case, what we've also done is we have not said in the will, we have not named people, because if a person predeceases another party or it predeceases the testator, in this particular case, then a person will be excluded from the will. And we do not know who will go first, who will pass away first, who will remain longer. Number one. Number two is people generally, although it is good to revisit and to relook at your will all the time, people generally don't do it. So if a will is not updated and a person is named in the will, it could lead to other complications. So what we've said in the will, that the will be drafted in terms of, or the estate will be distributed in terms of Islamic law of inheritance. Now, when it comes to the Islamic law of inheritance, then we have two schools of thought with regards to religious obligations, which we will explain in the next slide, on the coming up slides. The Shafi'i school of law and the Hanafi school of law. There we differ in terms, there's a difference of opinion between the two schools of law in terms of where does religious obligations fit in. Is it a debt like other debts that need to be paid off or not? So the Shafi'i school of thought says that religious liabilities and obligations would be regarded as a debt and needs to be paid off like any other debt from the estate, which means before you can even do any sort of distribution to anybody, you need to pay the debt off. From a Hanafi school of law, this is referred to as a wasiyah or a bequest. Now we need to understand a bequest from a Islamic law perspective. A bequest is allowed to non-heirs, people who will not inherit from you, and limited to 1/3 of the estate. So earlier on I said we have freedom of gestation limited to 1/3 of the estate. This is a bequest. The person may say, I have a particular friend and I would like him to inherit X amount of money from me when I pass away. Then because he is not a Qur'anic heir, it will be limited to 1/3 and the person will get that amount of money. So from a Hanafi school of law, a religious the religious obligations fit within the ambit of wasiyah or bequest, which means it will be limited to 1/3 of the estate. And if a person has religious obligations to fulfill which exceed 1/3 of the estate, then it will be limited to 1/3 of the estate.
Thanks. And Ahmed, just for the viewers, at the moment we've had the clauses approved by the supervisory board that you run on our behalf. And at the moment we have Shafi and Hanifi versions available through our specialist consultants. That doesn't mean we're not going to just stop there. We are developing other iterations for the other different beliefs or schools of thought in South Africa. So you'll be helping us with that. But just to stress that all of this will be done through clauses that are approved by the supervisory board and through our specialists who Ahmed and the team are helping us train up to go out and see your client to make sure that the will is drafted according to the specific needs and the QUR'ANIC principles. And like with everything at Capital Legacy, there's no fee for this will. We've taken away that obstacle. There's no fee for the safekeeping, and there's no cost for any amendments that you may want to make from time to time. One of the things that we've done in the will at your option is that we've allowed the ability to specify current religious obligations and liabilities. Now, this is where I reached the limits of my talent levels, and I'm going to ask Ahmed to step through how we've made this available in terms of observing your beliefs in terms of your Muslim faith. Ahmed, do you want to maybe talk us through what we've done in terms of the religious obligations in the will?
So in terms of religious obligations, the concept, let's understand the concept first. A Muslim person is required during his lifetime to perform certain obligations. So for example, a person is required to perform his prayers 5 times a day. A person is that is the unperformed salah. So the salah refers to prayers. A person is required to perform 5 times prayers, his 5 daily prayers every single day. And then a person is required to discharge his obligatory charity annually. A person is required to fast during the month of Ramadan, either 29 or 30 days, depending on the length of the month. A person is required once in a lifetime to perform the pilgrimage if he has the financial means to do so. Then at specific points, a person may have an animal to sacrifice, generally once a year. After we fast, the day of celebration, so we fast either 29 or 30 days. After we fast on the day of celebration, which is referred to as the day of Eid, there is a specific charity that they are required to give to the less fortunate so that they could also enjoy the day of celebration. So if a person did not do that, or when a person recites the Holy Quran, there are certain places where a person is required to fall into prostration. If a person did not do that, or if a person took a vow that I will or I will not do something, and then he breaks that vow, then a person is required to fast for 3 days during his lifetime. But now he does not do that. So all the religious obligations and liabilities, as we see on the screen, are things that a person is required to do during his lifetime. However, we all get lazy from time to time. A person may or may not fulfill the obligation correctly, etc., etc. So then what happens is the Islamic law has given a person to almost compensate from his will. So the first obligation is, if you did not do it during your lifetime and you are aware of it, then to complete it during your lifetime. But because we do not know when a person will pass away, at any time, during any day, any person can pass away. And that is why we have this possibility of making a wasiyah or a bequest, or asking this to be done on our behalf from the assets that the person leaves behind during his lifetime. So the important point is that it's supposed to be done during a person's lifetime. If it was not done during a person's lifetime, then a person may insert in his will that I need these things to be done on my behalf when I pass away. Then this it will become the duty of the executor of the estate to make sure that whatever funds have been attributed to each of these obligations, that funds should be given in charity to the poor and the needy.
Great.
So these are the religious obligations and liabilities. Now, earlier on, I was explaining to you the Hanafi and Shafi differences. From a Shafi school of law, they look at religious obligations very simply. They say that this is a debt to the Almighty, and like how a person may have debts to human beings, he has a debt to the Almighty, and therefore this amount should be paid off as a debt from a person's estate, which means that irrespective of the number, even if it exceeds 1/3 of the estate, the full amount will be paid out.
Now,
From
Ahmed,
a Hanafi school.
Now, Ahmed, what I understand from you here is that we can provide for these through the last will and testament, which we've done through the offering at Capital Legacy, and we must work with the estate administration teams to make sure that these are observed, and that you, as a member of the solution, can update this from time to time. But if just in the interest of time, if I can maybe just also touch on which you were earlier going through, was that in terms of the last will and testament, you can still, with our wills, have the option to leave 1/3, depending on the Shafi or Hanifi belief. And you can also use, and we did some great work together on this, that you can actually create a trust for your children or people who have a special need. And something unique that you helped us with is also in terms of the widow's trust that we can create to receive Sharia compliant life cover, not normal life cover. But now where we're seeking a lot of your help at the moment is where we need the Islamic judicial body to approve the estate distributions. Now, at the time of passing, could you guide us through that process of where the estate administrator would make sure that the distribution account complies with the Islamic heirship? How would we get that from the Islamic judicial body?
So, like I said earlier on, when a person passes away, the South African law has given us freedom of gestation. Now a person says and writes in his will that when I pass away, my estate should be distributed in terms of Islamic law of inheritance. It's important for us to then fall back on a organization who has some sort of acceptance in the community and has some sort of acceptance at the courts. So there are certain institutions in South Africa, religious institutions or Muslim organizations that have this type of standing in South Africa. When these organizations issue a certificate to the master of the court will accept the certificate as valid and as acceptable. We would then approach the Muslim judicial bodies, the various departments, In many cases, it's the fatwa department. That means the department that issues religious edicts and verdicts. We will contact them. We personally know the people in the various organizations. Depending on which organization a person has chosen, a person may have chosen an organization in Joburg or in Cape Town, Durban. Depending on which organization he has chosen, we will contact that organization. They will require some information, so they will require a death certificate. They will require information as to who has survived that person from a Sharia perspective, and they will ask certain questions, which is important for them to work out who inherits and to what extent. When they have all the information in front of them, they will then issue us with a certificate which you can take to the master of the court, and the certificate will say that the person was survived, as an example, by his wife and his son and his father, as an example. His wife will inherit so much, his father will inherit so much, and his son will inherit so much.
Great.
So then that certificate is then taken and used by the integrator to work out the distribution.
Yeah. So as you can see, I think we've been very thorough with regards to the will and making sure that it ties up to ultimately the estate's administration. Where else we've been thorough is in creating the TAKAFUL, or being able to offer Sharia compliant insurance solutions. So those of you who know us, we've got the legacy protection plan, which indemnifies the executor and trustee fees. This is a process of insurance. And then we also wanted to add on life cover. So what we sought to do together with the supervisory board is to create a TAKAFUL, which would make the insurances Sharia compliant. And this is where we've created something that's a little bit unique in how things have been done. And again, just to stress, to the best of our knowledge, it's the first complete life insurance Sharia compliant solution. How we've done it is that we've created a separate uncontaminated division in the Capital Legacy cell. So it actually is separate, and it is free of things such as interest and gambling. And that is continuously signed off by the likes of Ahmed. That division is not owned by us at Capital Legacy. It's owned by a trust, and that's where the board of trustees come in. And that trust, the beneficiaries of that trust is the contributing members or the plan holders to the various products that they may contribute for. So very much branded like the old mutual societies, where you've got this mutual society, it's owned by the members for the members, okay? But we simply at Capital Legacy administer the solution, and that creates the TAKAFUL.
And I think, Alex, what's quite important is, you said, it's totally separate from the current Capital Legacy cell. It's a separate division that, as you said, does not have any contamination or cannot be contaminated by any of the Capital Legacy past business.
And where we've learned some lessons is that you don't pay a premium. Now you're an owner by virtue of your membership or beneficiary through the trust. So you actually contribute, and for that contribution, you subscribe for the benefits. In this case, it's going to be the Tazkiya Legacy Protection Plan and Tazkiya My Cover. Now, just very quickly, Ahmed, if I can bring you back, I've spoken about the structure here of how we created the TAKAFUL. Could you maybe just touch on for the viewers quickly the principles that this achieves in creating Sharia compliance?
So it's important to understand that conventional insurance, or insurance as we know it, whether it's short-term or long-term insurance, has been deemed non-compliant from a Sharia perspective. Scholars have almost unanimously agreed that short-term and long-term insurance as we know it is not compliant. Why? Because when a person pays a premium, he receives something in exchange for that premium. Now, that when you make a payment in Islamic law, then your exchange cannot be unknown. Your exchange cannot contain elements of interest or riba as we know it. In this particular case, when you're making a payment in a particular currency, you're making a payment in rands, and the counter payment is also going to be in rands, then if the amounts are not equal, then that is seen as interest from a Sharia perspective and an interest-bearing transaction. So what we did by creating this mutual fund, a person contributes to the fund has rules, and in terms of the rules of the fund, a person may benefit from that fund. Now, what we have done is we've taken out the contractual relationship between the insurer in the conventional sense and the party that is insured. That contractual relationship has now been changed from a contract of insurance to a membership of a fund. A person becomes a member of a fund, You contribute to the fund. The fund has rules. In this particular case, it's life insurance type of rules. It will not be short-term insurance rules. So if a person meets up in an accident, he's not going to come claim for his car from here because the rules would exclude all those type of things. Whatever the rules have included, a person may benefit from the fund in terms of those rules. And that's where it becomes permissible and allowed from a Sharia perspective.
Great. Thanks, Ahmed. So now that we understand that we've created a TAKAFUL, and actually Capital Legacy doesn't own this insurance, but actually it's for the members, by the members, what we've been able to do is then completely offer a Tazkiya solution on our entire product solution, starting with the legacy services, which we've touched on in terms of the wills and estates, and the indemnity plans, which are the plans that indemnify for the executor, trustee, and conveyance fee, so there's no bill when you pass away. And then moving on to our extender options, including the immediate liquidity, and up until recently now our MyCover solution. So you'll hear us say MyCover or Tazkiya MyCover. The reason why we distinguish between those two is because there are two completely separate products, one being owned by Capital Legacy and the other being owned by the uncontaminated division.
And just being administered by Capital Legacy, being the Tazkiya MyCover.
So to give the viewers who don't know Capital Legacy an idea of what the legacy protection plans are, we've got the Tazkiya Legacy Protection Plan example here. So here we've got the gold legacy protection plan, where a person's got one property and they're going to be creating a trust for their children for at least 13 years. Now, if we look at their estate has got 4 million Rand, meaning there will be executive fees of 161,000. In terms of their property, remember it was just one of 2 million, there'll be conveyance fees of 31,000. And then in terms of the trust that they're creating, in terms of their will, a total of 4.7 million, because obviously there was some retirement or Sharia compliant life insurance that went into this trust of 4.7 million. So the total trustee fees for the 13 years would be 500,000 Rand. So that's a total amount of fees of 725,000. Now this is a bill that doesn't need to be paid by the state with the gold legacy protection plan. Because simply what this client could do is take our gold legacy protection plan or provide total indemnification of 783,000, which is more than the 725,000. So they're 100% covered. That means the estate won't pay a cent towards what I've just mentioned. It's got some other add-on benefits such as immediate cash, if a second dying cover in terms for their spouse, bringing the total to 1.4 million, and that's 133 Rand per month. Now, that's protecting the executor and the trustee fees. But what about the other needs that I may have over and above, like, for example, looking after or paying for my debts? So what we've also created is the Tazkiya MyCover. So we launched MyCover. Now we're also launching Tazkiya MyCover that would be owned in terms of the separate division. Now that will include all the benefactor options, so which I think you'll touch on shortly, being more benefit and so forth, as well as impairment and illness cover in the form of MyAbility. What this enables you to do together with your Sharia compliant will is to make sure that you can settle your debts in your estate. So we don't need to sell property. If you have got a large estate, to pay the inheritance taxes, which are also a debt in terms of the estate, and then using a widow's trust in terms of the will. Remember, we've got a golden thread throughout the whole solution. So we'll do the life insurance and we can create the widow's trust at the same time, and you can provide an income for the spouse.
Which is again unique to what we've done at Capital Legacy with the widow's trust.
But this is all well and good, but I'd like Brandon just to maybe take us through an example of how the Tazkiya MyCover can work.
Sure, and what I always like to do is actually just, as Alex, as you know, I always like to say, well, how does it practically work? Because we've gone through the talk of why it is Sharia compliant, but how does this actually practically work out in the field? So let's go through this example. So Alex already ran through the legacy protection plan with regard to it being a selected plan being gold. We, as Alex discussed, selected the beneficiary as the trust. Our benefactor choice is more benefit, which I'll touch on now. And the client that we're looking at is rating category 1. Remember, in our second webinar, we touched on MyCover. Now remember, Tazkiya MyCover is exactly the same as our standard MyCover. The only difference now is it's Sharia compliant. But the same benefits do apply, whether it is our standard MyCover or the Tazkiya MyCover. So your benefactor choices, as always, is more benefit, less premium, or cashback. For this example, we've chosen more benefit. So let's look at an example. Let's look at Ahmed. Age next 43, gender male, smoking status non-smoker. The selected cover here is 5.5 million at a premium of just over 1,000 Rand per month. Again, we've chosen the benefactor being more benefit. So for a 43-year-old male non-smoker, Ahmed can get more benefit of 1.5 million at a premium of 172 Rand a month. The benefactor indemnification, as we have actually discussed earlier with regards to the gold choice and the legacy protection plan of 133 Rand per month, where the actually indemnification was 783,000. As we've always said, when something is to happen and we're winding up the estate, all those costs adding up to 783 Rand, including the trust costs, are now indemnified, and there's no bill for the family at the end. We haven't chosen liability here, and our total premium being 1,135 Rand for a total of 6.9, call it 7 million Rand, which is up until now not been possible.
Well, what's important as well is that we were asked last week, will there be a different premium for this product compared to a normal market? Will there be a different premium for the Gold Legacy Protection Plan versus the Tazkiya Gold Legacy Protection Plan? There is no reason for us to have an extra premium or less premium. It's exactly the same as our current product suite. So there's no difference between the two from a cost point of view, just how it is structured in the back.
100%. So in terms of, for the advisor, what's the advisor with him? I think it's something that over the last couple of webinars, our viewers have become used to. But what's in it for you, the advisor? So our normal standard first year commission, we have our legacy protection plan commission, as Alex alluded to, our gold plan at 133 Rand per month, commission being just over 1,000 Rand for that. In terms of the My Cover commission, 8,781 Rand. In terms of our second year commission, just shy of 3,000 Rand. And then obviously, Alex, with us picking the trust as the beneficiary, we're obviously offering the will fee being 1,100 Rand. Then what's more important is actually the book value. And for those of you, the viewers, if I can just take a step back to what's actually made us quite unique, is our book value that we allow for the actual advisor. So what the book value actually is the value in the clients that you build up through Capital Legacy, that when they pass away, you actually share in that indemnification or that value. And it's been going for about 2 years now. And if we look at what our legacy protection plan book value would be, in this case, would be 64,000 Rand. But what's unique and what we actually discussed in My Cover 2 weeks ago is the My Cover book value. And because the advisor here chose the trust as a beneficiary, what we can do is offer up to 30% of what those trust fees would have been. We can actually pay to the advisor.
What would have been their normal commission?
Would have been their normal commission that we're actually paying back to the actual advisor when the client would pass away. And that equals 235,000, which again is extremely unique to the Capital Legacy fold. And as you said, it didn't matter if we were on the standard My Cover or if it's the Tazkiya My Cover, the same rules and the same rules apply. So I alluded to now, in terms of My Cover, you get 3 benefactor choices. As I said, for this example, we chose more benefit, but just to run through what the 3 choices would have been for Ahmed. So he chose 5.7 million in cover for 1,002 Rand per month. And we said that if he chose the more benefit, he could get an additional cover and pay 1,537, get 1.5 million extra additional cover on top of that. If we went for, let's just show what the other options are. If you went for less premium, we would have got 4 million in cover for 829 Rand and getting a less premium or reduction of 172 Rand per month. And then our final option, remember the final option is a combination of more benefit as well as cashback. We've always said that the cashback is around about sort of 12 to 14 months of your premiums back paid every 5 years. Ahmed here would get 4.7 million in cover and get about 11,000 Rand back, 11,100 Rand back every 5 years.
And just to reiterate, Ahmed can chop and change from month to month.
100%. Again, very unique. We explained it in the My Cover webinar 2 weeks ago, how you can go from more benefit. Things might happen. You never know what actually happens. We could actually have a pandemic and cash flow becomes a problem. You can go down to less premium. And then after a few months' time, go back up to more benefit.
Now, Brandon, I know we've got a few questions that we've been signaled are coming through. So the last piece of the puzzle to making sure that we have a complete estate solution or planning solution is that we make sure of the estate administration. So if I can maybe just take the viewers through quickly the steps that are followed. So if you do a Sharia compliant will with us, these are the steps that we've trained our estate administration to follow. So first we'll observe the payment of the burial and sharding expenses. Then depending on your school of thought, we'll have the payments of all the debts, all the settlements of the religious liabilities. If you can maybe just click for me for the viewers. So we'll either do one or the other first. Then we'll determine the Islamic heirs through the relevant Muslim judicial body that Ahmed touched on. and then the payment of the wazir if you've actually done that in the will. So what that means is if you've exercised the 1/3 option in your will. If you've said everything according to my Islamic is, step 5 would not be applicable. Hopefully you would have also then specified the creation of trusts, especially if you've got minor children. So we'll create those trusts. And then the residue would be distributed amongst the Islamic heirs. Remember, we would have got the certificate from the judicial body to say these would be the Islamic heirs because, like interstate succession, it changes as the family tree evolves and changes. So we would need to go according to that certificate. And then something like Capital Legacy does that's unique is, you may be working for a company where there's a retirement fund and even a life cover that's not Sharia compliant. There's still going to be a payout of that money, and we'll facilitate that for you. Now, what's unique about creating a Sharia-compliant life insurance offering is that because it's Sharia-compliant, Brandon, you can actually nominate beneficiaries. And one of the beneficiaries you can nominate is a widow's trust you've created in your will that can create a monthly income for your spouse, separate from the Islamic heirship that you follow in terms of your faith, which is a powerful planning tool if you want to look after your spouse and the children in that manner.
100%. And I think, Alex, what's really important, and I want to stress this quite a lot, is that everyone talks about Sharia-compliant wills, but no one actually ever talks about Sharia-compliant estate administration. So you might have a Sharia-compliant will, but then when it comes to estate administration, do the executors actually know how to follow to make it Sharia-compliant when actually winding up the estate? And then it's very important that we've actually gone that extra step to make sure when the estates come in and we're doing estate administration, we actually follow to what actually needs to be
give
done.
confidence.
100%.
So to summarize it there for the viewers is that we've taken the time and effort and continue to have a board of advisors in the form of the board of scholars. And then at the same time, we've created a TAKAFUL, which is owned by a trust. It's got nothing to do with us. And it's actually the beneficiaries are the contributing members. And that is supported by another board of trustees who provide oversight for the ownership of the underlying insurance assets. And then we've gone to the extra degrees that you've seen today in terms of how we go about constructing the will through our specialist consultants. So as you're an advisor, you don't need to worry about now having to try to figure out a Sharia will. You just send us a name and a number, and we will actually send one of our consultants with you to go sit with your client to look at how we could do the Sharia will, all the way through to the estate administration with these 9 steps that you can see here. So at least you know what you expect if you come to us for a Sharia solution.
100%. So I think to all our viewers, that's sort of a bit of a tidbit in terms of where we are from a MyCover or Tazkiya MyCover product point of view. Many of you have been asking us probably from about the beginning of the year when little sort of secrets kind of went out that we're actually doing this. Again, to the best of our knowledge, it's the first Sharia compliance life product that's actually come to the market. Because as always, in terms of how to get more information, we've got our Legacy link that's launching soon. I've discussed this before in the last 3 webinars, where it's our own form of app that you as the advisor can actually go on and see things such as your full client listing, access to our quick quote tools, as well as LPP Explorer, Home Vantage, and Key Plan calculators, as well as view all your clients' quote listings and many more things to actually come. The broker consultants are going to be coming out over the next week or two to the advisors, where we're actually going to be discussing more about the Legacy link and how you can actually get onto the actual platform. It's very user-friendly, and again, I think it's really going to change the market in terms of the way the brokers actually looking after their clients and administering them going forward. But Alex, before we close off, I was just scrolling through some of the questions or the many questions that are actually coming through, and I think there are going to be many more. But just pick 2 for the sake of time. Maybe you want to touch on a question that came through here is, what if I've already got existing life cover?
So just firstly, Brandon, thank you, Ahmed, for coming in and making a plan to zoom in for us. Sorry, Brandon, so the question, what do I do if I have existing life cover? So again, to the best of my knowledge, there's no Sharia compliant life cover. There's Sharia compliant short-term insurance, Sharia compliant investments. We now have a Sharia compliant life insurance so that you can switch over to this and do the will at the same time. Just to touch on other previous attributes of MyCover, we will look at the recent underwriting decision of that existing life insurance, but at least now you'll be able to get a Sharia compliant life cover, and you can do more with the beneficiaries depending on your school of thought in terms of just making the life cover settle debts or actually pay named beneficiaries. So, but to do that, you need to have a Sharia compliant life cover, which you would need to switch to.
100%. And I think it always makes sense in terms of having the Sharia compliant will, going to the Sharia compliant life cover.
It's an absolute must.
100%. Then another question that came through, and it's coming through thick and fast, is how do I get more involved? How do I learn more about it? Unfortunately, for the sake of time, we've only really had an hour to go through this, and there's so much to discuss around this exciting product. From next week, we're going to be doing many breakfasts and lunches around the country, starting in Johannesburg, going all the way through the major metropolitan areas, whereby we're going to be discussing this further with smaller in-depth groups. So please, will you please look out for the invites that are coming? And due to demand, we'll have more. I think we've already going to have to extend the few that we've got. So during the month of September and October, please speak to your broker consultant that's going to be coming out to you, or get hold of us at Capital Legacy to see how you can actually be involved in these get-togethers and have discussions around it. It's a new topic for many people, and it's an exciting one.
We've learned a lot.
We've learned a hell of a lot in terms of this. So guys, from our side, from myself, Brandon Garbutt, MD at Capital Legacy, from Alex Simeonides, our CEO at Capital Legacy, and Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us. As Alex said, thanks for your time. Thanks again for everyone. It's been 4 great webinars. It all started off with our big launch during August, and I'd like to thank everyone who's actually joined us. I know it takes a lot out of your time every single week, but hopefully you've learned a lot, and many of you are excited about the 4 new products that we've actually launched during the month of August. Again, please get hold of us at Capital Legacy, www.capitallegacy.co.za, or please get hold of your broker consultant. We're going to be out in the market a lot during September and October with regards to all the new products, and we're freely available. Again, thanks for your time, and keep safe. Thank you.